I was greatly encouraged to see our country unite in condemnation of last week's lawlessness and the rioting. I am further encouraged that despite my Democrat colleagues' claims to the contrary, President Trump is committed to a peaceful and uninterrupted transfer of power. But that's not good enough for my colleagues across the aisle. With just 7 days left in President Trump's term, they are fast-tracking impeachment proceedings.
That is Republican Congressman Guy Reschenthaler of Pennsylvania speaking out against impeachment in the House yesterday. And he joins us here now on National Report. Congressman, welcome back.
Emma, good morning. Thanks for having me on. And as always, just call me Guy, please.
All right, Guy. You got it. Okay, so as you know, it has seriously taken months for Congress to find a solution for COVID relief. But they got a second impeachment through in record speed. The president, as we know, now leaving office in 6 days. What do you make of the Democrats' priorities right now?
Well, clearly, it's 100% motivated. Their actions are 100% motivated by politics. And I think it's absolutely inexcusable that with less than a week, or roughly a week, of President Trump's first term, the Democrats rushed through impeachment. And just look at the backdrop, Emma. You had an entire summer full of chaos, rioting, looting, Antifa engaged in violent acts. And yet the Democrats turn around and instead of cooling the temperature, instead of letting cooler heads prevail, instead of working on issues that would unite us, they turn around and rush through within a matter of literally hours impeachment articles. That's unacceptable. The Democrats should have taken a step back, looked at the situation, said, you know what, we have a new president coming in less than a week. Let's focus on something that will heal this nation rather than divide us.
Well, Democrats were not alone in this. There were 10 GOP members who voted in favor of impeachment, including Liz Cheney, the number 3 Republican in the House. Your thoughts on the future of the Republican Party, specifically those members who supported this impeachment?
Well, I'm clearly disappointed that Republicans would vote yes to impeach President Trump, especially the lack of due process. We had no hearings on this impeachment like we have in the past. And again, with less than a week, we also know that even if the Senate were to take up impeachment, it wouldn't take place, Emma, until after Joe Biden is sworn in. So we rushed through this. So I'm disappointed that Republicans voted to impeach. But I think what we need to do moving forward is we need to unite, not only as a Republican Party, we need to unite as American people. And I think that we can start by toning down the rhetoric. We can also work on focusing on issues that will unite Americans. You were talking about COVID relief. We could have had a bipartisan COVID relief bill to follow the other ones that we had in the summer. Instead, it was the Democrats. It was Nancy Pelosi that was trying to push through radical liberal agenda items like giving free health care to illegal immigrants, giving tax cuts to billionaires and millionaires in blue states, bailing out mismanaged blue state budgets that have been mismanaged for decades. It was the Democrats that focused on these divisive issues. Republicans were willing to reach across the aisle and get things done.
So you mentioned toning down the rhetoric and calling for unity at this point. And we appreciate your time, of course, joining us on news programs. We've heard from other members of the House who are also taking time to sit down and speak on news programs as well. And Representative Eric Swalwell spoke with PBS, and he made some interesting remarks about President Trump and his supporters as well. Here's what he had to say, and I'll get your reaction.
Osama bin Laden did not enter U.S. soil on September 11, but it was widely acknowledged that he was responsible for inspiring the attack on our country. And the president, with his words, using the words fight, with the speakers that he assembled that day who called for trial by combat and said we have to take names and kick ass, that is hate speech that inspired and radicalized people to storm the Capitol.
Guy, your thoughts on those remarks from Congressman Swalwell there and whether that sounds like he's stepping towards unity by that comparison?
Well, those comments certainly were not helpful, Emma. I can say that. But where were the Democrats this summer when they were they calling out each other when you had members of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris's campaign teams offering to bail out Antifa protesters when they got arrested? Where were they when Maxine Waters told a crowd to, if you see Republicans or you see members of the Trump administration, to get in their face. Where were they for that? Where were they when AOC said that riots are a way to get noticed and riots are a good thing because they need to make people feel uncomfortable? So where was the condemnation all summer long when Antifa was burning cities and businesses to the ground? I find it a little ironic, a little hypocritical that all of a sudden now the Democrats are condemning violence. I want to be clear about something, Emma. I condemn political violence and mob violence all summer long. When Antifa set up the autonomous zone in Seattle, I condemned it. When they were burning Portland for over a month, I condemned that. Kenosha, condemned that. The Democrats were absolutely silent. And now I'm also condemning the attacks on the 6th. So I would like to see the Democrats tone down the rhetoric and drop this double standard. Mob violence is mob violence, regardless of the political affiliation or the ideology of a mob. It is still violent behavior and un-American and unhelpful.
I want to ask you about some comments made by an anchor on CNN, Jake Tapper, where he appeared to question at least, the loyalty of Congressman Brian Mast, who lost both of his legs in Afghanistan. Here's what Tapper had to say.
Congressman Brian Mast, a Republican from Florida, who lost his legs, by the way, fighting for democracy abroad. Although I don't know about his commitment to it here in the United States. He said, did anybody say that?
Yes.
Yeah, we heard him.
Yeah. The answer is yes. Yes.
And he actually doubled down on those remarks on Twitter, saying that he questioned his commitment to democracy of anyone who spread election lies by signing on to that, quote, deranged Texas AG lawsuit and voted to commit sedition. Your thoughts on Tapper's remarks on air and then online as well?
Emma, I have a lot of thoughts. First off, let me just say this. Brian Mast is a friend, and Brian Mast is a hero. What he did in the service of our country is heroic, and it was very brave. So to attack Brian Mast's patriotism is misplaced, and it's frankly reckless. Now, talking about individual votes and saying that somehow these votes were undermining democracy is what Tapper suggested in that quote. That is reckless. Where was the mainstream media? And where were these pundits when in 2017, the Democrats were taking the same exact votes? The number 3 member in the Democrat House, majority party, Whip Clyburn, voted the same way as we just did to not certify the election results. And you can vote to not certify election results because you have concerns with a given election. That is not saying you're undermining democracy. So again, where was the outrage from the mainstream media when you had Maxine Waters, when you had Clyburn, when you had all these other Democrats take identical votes that we just took last week? It was not the end of the republic when the Democrats were doing it, but all of a sudden now we're held to this bizarre double standard. And finally, let me just say this, Emma. The mainstream media and their inability or unwillingness to articulate what these votes are actually about is causing a lot of the disruptions you're seeing. Now, I'm not minimizing what happened. I'm not making excuses for what happened on the 6th. But it's time for the media, the mainstream media, to do their job and accurately and fully report what's going on. When they hide information, when they conflate issues, it leads to a lot of the unsettledness and the uneasiness that you're seeing in American society. So I do hold the mainstream media accountable for, again, not the violence, but a lot of the sentiments that you're seeing across the United States that, again, is dividing us.
Yeah. All right. We've got to leave it at that. But that is Guy Reschenthaler, the congressman from Pennsylvania. Always great to see you, Guy. Thanks so much.
You too, Emma. Take care. Thanks.